My name is Abram Williams, 68 years old, and still kicking. I was humming Christmas carols while wrapping presents for my grandkids when my phone rang. It was my son Thomas. My heart warmed until I heard his hesitant voice. He cleared his throat and said he and Sarah weren't expecting me this Christmas. Something about vacation plans with friends. I sat silent for a moment, then smiled even though he couldn't see me. After hanging up, I calmly got in my car and drove home. I had decisions to make. If you're watching this right now, let me know where you're viewing from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had family break your heart. Trust me, what happened next might surprise you. I should probably fill you in on the details of my family situation. My son Thomas is 42 now, married to Sarah, who just turned 39 last month. They have two beautiful daughters, my granddaughters Lily, who is 8, and Zoe, who is 6. I have photos of them all over my living room, though the newest ones are from last Easter when I was finally invited over after missing the previous 3 family gatherings. I lost my wife Martha to cancer 10 years ago. We had been married for 37 wonderful years, high school sweethearts who built a life together from scratch. Martha was the glue of our family, always making sure holidays were special, birthdays were celebrated properly, and Sunday dinners were sacred family time. After she passed, the dynamics shifted drastically between Thomas and me. The weekly dinners stopped. The phone calls became less frequent. The spontaneous visits disappeared altogether. Thomas met Sarah about a year after his mother died. I was still deep in grief, but I tried my best to welcome her into our small family. They got married 9 years ago in a beautiful ceremony on the beach. Martha would have loved it. I thought Sarah and I were getting along fine until they announced they were looking to buy a house. That's when I made what I now realize was my first mistake. "Let me help you," I offered, thinking this would bring us closer together. I had a substantial retirement fund that Martha and I had built over decades of careful saving. "I can put down 30% to help with the down payment." Thomas initially refused, but when they found their dream home and realized they might lose it to another buyer, he called me in a panic. I didn't hesitate. I withdrew $120,000 from my retirement account and handed it over. The joy on his face was worth every penny, but I didn't stop there. When I saw them struggling with the monthly mortgage payments of $1,850, I quietly arranged with the bank to make those payments directly. Thomas was proud, but eventually accepted what he called temporary help until they got on their feet. That temporary arrangement had now been going on for 8 years. Meanwhile, I continued living in the old family home, surrounded by memories of Martha and the family we had raised together. Friends suggested I should sell the house and move into something smaller, maybe even find a companion to share my golden years with. I wasn't interested. There had only been one love in my life, and she was gone. My focus remained on maintaining whatever connection I could with Thomas and his family. I made consistent efforts to stay in their lives, weekly phone calls even when they went straight to voicemail, birthday gifts for everyone, including Sarah, though I never received so much as a thank you from her. I attended every school play, soccer game, and dance recital the girls participated in, sitting alone in the audience and waving from a distance when Thomas and Sarah hurried the girls away after the events. Sarah never warmed up to me. At first, I thought she was just shy or perhaps intimidated. Martha had been such an exceptional mother and homemaker. Perhaps Sarah felt she had impossible shoes to fill. I tried to make it clear I wasn't comparing them, but something in my demeanor or words must have failed to convince her. Over the years, her coldness became more pronounced. She would avoid eye contact at family gatherings, make excuses to leave the room when I entered, and frequently planned trips that coincidentally fell on holidays when I might have expected an invitation. I tried to speak with Thomas about it once, about 2 years ago. He became defensive immediately. "Dad, you're imagining things. Sarah is just busy with the girls and her job. Not everything is about you." Those words stung more than he knew. Nothing in my life had ever been about me. Everything had been for Martha, for Thomas, and now for his family. but I swallowed my hurt and backed off. The last thing I wanted was to create a rift that might cut me off from my granddaughters entirely. Things had been looking up in the past month, though. Thomas had been calling more frequently, asking about holiday recipes his mother used to make, wondering if I still had his childhood ornaments somewhere in the attic. He mentioned several times how much the girls were looking forward to Christmas this year. I took these as positive signs, hints that perhaps this Christmas would be different. Maybe this year, I would finally be welcomed fully into their home and hearts for the holiday. I began preparing early. I found Thomas's old ornaments and carefully cleaned them. I dug out Martha's recipe cards and practiced making her famous apple pie and cranberry sauce. I spent hours selecting perfect gifts for everyone, including Sarah. A beautiful cashmere sweater in her favorite color, according to Thomas. For my granddaughters, I found the dolls Lily had circled in a catalog and the science kit Zoe had mentioned during our brief conversation when Thomas had put me on speakerphone during a recent call. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. This Christmas would be the turning point in our relationship. I could feel it. Martha always said I was an optimist to a fault. I guess some things never change, even at 68. 2 weeks before Christmas, I was sitting at my dining room table wrapping presents when my phone rang. The screen lit up with Thomas's name, and I smiled as I answered. Thomas. I was just wrapping presents for the girls. I found that science kit Zoe was talking about, and wait until you see what I got for Lily. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, but he didn't immediately respond. When he finally spoke, his voice had a strange, tight quality to it. Dad, I need to tell you something. About Christmas. My hands stopped moving, the colorful wrapping paper crinkling under my suddenly still fingers. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. What about Christmas, son? Another pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background. Sarah, I presumed. We've decided to accept an invitation from some friends. They have a cabin up in the mountains, and they've invited us to spend Christmas there. The girls are excited about having a white Christmas this year. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this information. Thomas and his family lived in Georgia, same as me. The nearest mountains were the Appalachians, barely a 3-hour drive. Oh, that sounds nice. Which friends are these? I asked, keeping my voice even. Just some couples from Sarah's work. You wouldn't know them. I nodded to myself. When will you leave? Maybe we could do an early celebration? I've already got all the presents ready, and I was planning to make your mother's recipes. The line went quiet again. I could hear more murmuring in the background. That's not going to work, Dad. We're pretty busy with preparations and school events for the girls. Maybe we can get together after the holidays, like in January? I felt a coldness spreading through my chest, but I kept my voice steady. I see. Well, that's disappointing, but I understand plans change. Thanks for understanding, Dad. I'll call you after we get back, okay? Sure, Thomas. Have a good trip. The call ended, and I sat there holding my phone, surrounded by half-wrapped presents and holiday decorations that suddenly seemed pointless. Something about the conversation didn't sit right. Thomas had been calling more often, asking about holiday traditions, seeming eager to connect. This abrupt change of plans felt wrong. After sitting in silence for nearly an hour, I did something I rarely did. I opened up Facebook on my computer. I wasn't much for social media, but I had created an account years ago to see photos of the grandkids when Thomas and Sarah rarely sent them directly. I navigated to Sarah's page, which was mostly public. Her most recent post made my heart sink. Posted just 3 hours earlier. Christmas prep in full swing. Tree is up, decorations everywhere, and menu planning started. Can't wait to host the annual family dinner at our place this year. The post included photos of their living room with a freshly decorated Christmas tree, stockings hung by the fireplace, and Lily and Zoe grinning while holding up homemade ornaments. The timestamp showed it was posted right before Thomas called me. They weren't going to a cabin in the mountains. They were hosting Christmas at their home. They just didn't want me there. I sat back, feeling as if I'd been punched in the stomach. The pain was physical, radiating through my chest and settling like a lead weight. I scrolled through more of Sarah's recent posts and found mentions of her parents arriving on December 23rd, her sister and brother-in-law coming with their kids, and plans for a big family gathering on Christmas Day. A family gathering that apparently had no place for me. I shut the computer and walked to the kitchen, mechanically filling a glass with water and drinking it down. My mind raced through memories of other holidays and special occasions over the past several years. The last-minute cancellations. The excuses about the girls being sick, only to later see photos of perfectly healthy children celebrating with Sarah's family. The times Thomas called the day after a holiday, sounding guilty, claiming they had tried to reach me but couldn't get through, despite my phone showing no missed calls. It wasn't just this Christmas. I had been systematically excluded from their lives for years, tolerated occasionally for appearances, but never truly welcomed. And Thomas had been complicit in it all, making excuses, telling lies, keeping me at arm's length while accepting my financial support without hesitation. I wandered back to the dining room and stared at the half-wrapped presents. Gifts carefully chosen that would now sit unopened, unappreciated. I thought of the mortgage payment that would automatically be deducted from my account on the first of the month, as it had been for the past 8 years. Nearly $2,000 every month to pay for a home where I wasn't welcome, where my own son would lie to keep me away. The pain in my chest transformed into something else. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. For the first time in years, I saw the situation for what it was. I had been trying so hard to be included that I had accepted crumbs of affection while continuing to give everything. I had become a wallet, not a father or grandfather, and it was largely my own doing. Martha would have seen it sooner. She always could spot the truth behind people's words. She wouldn't have let it get this far. "I've been a fool," I whispered to the empty room. The Christmas lights I'd put up around the windows blinked back at me, red and green reflections on the glass that looked like accusations. It was time to make a change. It was time to stop letting people treat me as an afterthought. I spent the next 3 days in a state of quiet contemplation, barely leaving my house except to cancel the additional food deliveries I had ordered for the holiday cooking I had planned to do. I sat for hours in Martha's old rocking chair by the window, watching winter birds at the feeder and thinking about the years since her death. I had devoted my life to our son, even more so after losing her. When Martha was diagnosed with cancer, we had just celebrated Thomas's graduation from college. She fought hard for 3 years, and during that time, we focused entirely on her care and comfort. Thomas had been supportive but distant, starting his career in another city and visiting when he could. I never blamed him for that. Young men need to build their own lives. After Martha died, I threw myself into being there for Thomas in any way he needed. When he met Sarah, I stepped back, giving them space to build their relationship without an old man hovering around. When they decided to buy a house, I offered financial help without hesitation. I had planned to travel in my retirement, maybe see some of the places Martha and I had dreamed about visiting someday. But those plans were easily set aside to help my son establish his home. 8 years of mortgage payments, 96 payments of $1,850 each, nearly $180,000, on top of the initial down payment, all given freely, with love, asking nothing in return except to be included in their lives, to be allowed to know my grandchildren, to maintain some connection to the family Martha and I had created together, and in return, I had been lied to, excluded, made to feel like an unwelcome obligation rather than a beloved father and grandfather. On the 3rd day after Thomas's call, I made my decision. It was time to respect myself enough to establish some boundaries. If I wasn't valued as a father and grandfather, I would no longer function as their private banker. It was time for Thomas to stand on his own feet financially, just as he had chosen to distance himself from me emotionally. I went to my computer and logged into my banking portal. The next mortgage payment was scheduled for automatic withdrawal on January 1st, just over 2 weeks away. With a few clicks, I canceled the automatic payment. A warning popped up on screen, asking if I was sure. I had never missed or been late with a payment in 8 years. I clicked confirm. Next, I opened a new browser tab and began searching for beachfront resorts in Florida. Martha and I had always talked about spending a winter week somewhere warm, watching the ocean and walking on the beach at sunset. We never got the chance. Well, I was going to take that trip now, on my own. I found a beautiful oceanfront resort in Palm Beach with a special holiday package. The photos showed a bright, airy suite, with a balcony overlooking the Atlantic. There was a heated pool, beach access, and several restaurants on the property. It wasn't cheap, but I had the money sitting in my account that would have gone to Thomas's mortgage. I booked a one-bedroom suite for 7 nights, starting December 23rd. After completing the reservation, I composed a brief email to Thomas. Thomas, I've decided to take a Christmas vacation this year. I've canceled the January mortgage payment and used those funds to book myself a week at a beachfront resort in Florida. I'll be unavailable from December 23rd through December 30th. Enjoy your holidays with your friends in the mountain cabin. Abram. I kept it short and factual. No accusations, no anger, no guilt trips, just informing him of my decision and plans. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I went shopping. I bought new clothes, including swim trunks and lightweight shirts appropriate for Florida weather. I picked up several books I'd been wanting to read but hadn't made time for. I purchased a new suitcase, as I hadn't traveled anywhere requiring more than an overnight bag in over a decade. As I packed my new purchases and prepared for my trip, I felt lighter than I had in years. For so long I had been waiting for permission to be included in my son's life. I had been putting my own needs and desires on hold, hoping that eventually I would be welcomed back into the family fold. I realized now how unhealthy that pattern had become. This wasn't about punishing Thomas or forcing him to include me. It was about reclaiming my own life and self-respect. If my relationship with my son was going to heal, it would need to be built on mutual respect and honesty, not financial dependency and obligation. The day before my departure, I cleaned the house thoroughly, stopped the mail, and set the thermostat to maintain a minimal temperature while I was gone. I loaded my new suitcase into the car and took one last look at the Christmas tree I had put up, its lights twinkling in the empty living room. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness and doubt. Then I remembered Sarah's Facebook post and Thomas's lies. I remembered years of exclusion and last-minute cancellations. I remembered how it felt to sit alone on Christmas Day, calling a son who never answered, looking at wrapped presents that would be delivered weeks later, with embarrassed explanations. I locked the door behind me and got in the car. It was time for a new Christmas tradition, one that honored my own worth. The drive to Palm Beach took almost 8 hours, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I played old jazz albums that Martha and I used to dance to in our living room, and as I headed south, I could feel the air growing warmer, the winter chill of Georgia giving way to Florida sunshine. By the time I pulled into the resort's circular driveway, I was feeling more relaxed than I had in months. The lobby was decorated for Christmas, with a massive tree adorned in blue and silver ornaments, reaching toward the high ceiling. Garlands wrapped around columns, and soft holiday music played in the background. The young woman at the reception desk greeted me warmly. "Welcome to the Ocean View Resort, Mr. Williams. We're delighted to have you with us for the holidays." My suite exceeded the expectations set by the online photos. The living area was spacious and elegantly furnished, with wide windows and a glass door leading to a private balcony. From there, I could see the ocean stretching to the horizon, waves breaking gently on the white sand beach. The bedroom featured a king-sized bed with crisp white linens, and the bathroom boasted a shower large enough for 2 people and a separate soaking tub. I unpacked my new clothes, hanging them carefully in the closet, then went straight to the balcony. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The sound of the waves was hypnotic. I took a deep breath of salt air and felt something inside me begin to unwind. For dinner that first night, I went down to the resort's seafood restaurant. The hostess asked if I was dining alone, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel a twinge of embarrassment at the question. Yes, I was alone, and that was perfectly fine. I turned my phone off before going to bed, and left it off the entire next day. I spent the morning walking along the beach, my pant legs rolled up, and my feet in the surf. In the afternoon, I sat by the pool with one of my new books, occasionally taking a dip in the warm water. For dinner, I tried the resort's Italian restaurant, where I struck up a conversation with the server, a college student working through the holidays. The second day followed a similar pattern. Beach in the morning, pool in the afternoon, another restaurant in the evening. I didn't think about Thomas or the mortgage payment or Christmas traditions. I just lived in the moment, enjoying the sun, the water, and the sense of freedom that came with putting myself first for once. On the third day of my vacation, December 25th, Christmas Day, I woke up early and watched the sunrise from my balcony. The sky turned from black to deep blue to a riot of pinks and oranges before the sun emerged from the ocean like a golden promise. I thought of Martha briefly, wishing she could see this with me, but the memory brought warmth rather than pain. Later that morning, after breakfast, I decided to check my phone. I plugged it in, powered it up, and waited. As soon as it connected to service, it began buzzing continuously with notifications. 18 missed calls from Thomas. 7 voicemails. Numerous text messages. I started with the first voicemail, time-stamped the evening after I had sent my email. Dad, what are you talking about? You canceled the mortgage payment? Call me back right away. The second one, from the following morning. Dad, this isn't funny. The bank called about the payment. Is this some kind of joke? Call me back now. The third, from that evening. Where are you? Why aren't you answering your phone? You can't just stop the mortgage payment without any warning. The messages grew increasingly frantic and angry. Dad, Sarah is freaking out about what this will do to our credit score. You need to call the bank and fix this immediately. If you're doing this because we can't have you for Christmas, that's really childish. We explained the situation. The sixth voicemail, left on Christmas Eve. Dad, I'm seriously worried now. Mrs. Parker next door says, your car is gone. Where are you? This isn't like you. And finally, the most recent one, left just an hour earlier on Christmas morning. If I don't hear from you by the end of today, I'm filing a missing person report, and then I'm driving to your house and breaking down the door if I have to. This has gone far enough. The text messages followed a similar pattern, starting with confusion, moving to anger, and finally to concern. The most recent one read, Dad, please just let me know you're okay. I'm really worried. I put the phone down and walked back out to the balcony. The ocean continued its eternal rhythm, waves breaking on the shore, receding, and breaking again. Steady, reliable, honest. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt for worrying Thomas. That hadn't been my intention. But another part recognized that this was the most attention he had paid to me in years. It had taken a financial consequence, and my complete disappearance for him to show genuine concern. I decided not to respond immediately. Instead, I changed into my swim trunks and headed down to the beach. The resort was quieter than usual, with many families in their rooms opening presents or enjoying private celebrations. The beach, however, had a scattering of guests taking advantage of the perfect weather. As I walked along the shoreline, I noticed an older gentleman about my age sitting in one of the resort's beach chairs, reading a book. Something about his solitary presence resonated with me. On my second pass by his chair, he looked up and nodded. "Merry Christmas," he said. "Merry Christmas to you too," I replied, pausing. "Mind if I ask why you're alone on the beach on Christmas Day?" He chuckled. "I could ask you the same question." I smiled. "Fair enough. I'm Abram." "Gordon," he said, extending his hand. "And to answer your question, I'm alone because my kids are with their mother and her new husband in Colorado. My turn with them is New Year's." I nodded. "Divorce?" 10 years ago. "You?" "Widower. 10 years as well." Gordon gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Have a seat, fellow holiday refugee." I sat, and we fell into easy conversation. Gordon was a retired high school principal from New Jersey. His ex-wife had remarried 8 years ago, and while the divorce had been contentious, they had eventually established a civil relationship for the sake of their 3 children. "The first few years were rough," he admitted. "I was so angry about missing holidays with the kids. I tried to buy their love with expensive gifts and special trips. It took me a while to realize that wasn't healthy for any of us." "What changed?" I asked. "I started respecting myself enough to set boundaries. Made it clear that I expected to be treated with courtesy and included in important events. Stopped trying to compete with their stepfather with gifts, and started focusing on quality time instead." He shrugged, not saying it was easy, but things are better now. "My relationship with my kids is actually stronger because it's based on mutual respect rather than guilt and obligation." We talked for hours, sharing stories about our lives, our careers, our experience of losing the relationships we had thought would last forever. As the sun began to set, we walked together to the resort's main restaurant, which was serving a special Christmas dinner, and continued our conversation over turkey and ham with all the trimmings. By the time we said goodnight, I had made my first new friend in years. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet for breakfast the next morning. Back in my room, I looked at my phone again. 3 more missed calls from Thomas. I turned the phone off again and placed it in the drawer of the nightstand. Tomorrow would be soon enough to deal with the fallout. Tonight, I wanted to savor the peace I had found and the unexpected gift of a new friendship on Christmas Day. On the 5th day of my vacation, after a pleasant breakfast with Gordon and plans to meet again for dinner, I returned to my room and decided it was time to call Thomas back. I couldn't avoid the conversation forever, and my intention had never been to cause him genuine distress. I sat on the balcony, looking out at the ocean for courage, and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "Dad? Is that you? Where are you?" "Hello, Thomas. Yes, it's me. I'm fine. I'm in Florida, just as I mentioned in my email." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then his voice came back, tight with anger. "You're in Florida? On vacation? While we've been worried sick about you? I told you in my email exactly where I was going and why. I'm sorry if you were worried, but I was very clear about my plans." "Clear? You sent a 2-sentence email saying you canceled our mortgage payment and were going to Florida. That's not clear. That's crazy behavior." His voice had risen to almost a shout. I kept my tone even. "I needed some time to myself after learning that you lied to me about your Christmas plans." Another silence, longer this time. When Thomas spoke again, his voice had changed. "What are you talking about?" "I saw Sarah's Facebook posts. Thomas, I know you're not spending Christmas in a mountain cabin with friends. You're hosting her family at your home. The home I've been paying for, by the way. You're checking up on us through social media? That's invasion of privacy." I couldn't help but laugh at that. "Her posts are public, Thomas. And that's what you're concerned about? Not the fact that you lied to your father about your Christmas plans instead of simply telling me I wasn't welcome?" "It's not that you weren't welcome, Dad. It's just complicated." "Then uncomplicate it for me. Tell me the truth for once." I heard him sigh heavily. Sarah doesn't really enjoy your visits. She feels like you're always judging her, comparing her to Mom, finding fault with how she runs the household and raises the girls." The words stung, but I kept my voice steady. "Has she given me a chance to show her otherwise? Has she ever tried to have an actual conversation with me? She shouldn't have to try. You're the one who should be making the effort. You're the one coming into our home. The home I paid for." I reminded him quietly. "There it is." Thomas's voice rose again. "You hold that over our heads constantly. Every time you don't get your way, you remind us that you paid for the house. Like that gives you the right to dictate our lives." I took a deep breath, watching a seagull circle lazily above the waves. "Thomas, this is the first time in 8 years that I have ever mentioned the financial help I've given you. Ever. I have never used it to try to control you or your family. But I am stating a fact. I have contributed nearly $300,000 to your home between the down payment and monthly mortgage payments. And in return, I have been systematically excluded from your lives and lied to about holiday gatherings. That's not fair, Dad. We've included you plenty of times. When? Name one holiday in the past 3 years where I was invited to join your family without a last-minute cancellation or change of plans. The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Look, I continued, softening my tone. I don't want to fight with you. I didn't cancel the mortgage payment to punish you. I canceled it because I realized I've been enabling an unhealthy dynamic. I've been trying to buy a place in your life, and you and Sarah have been happy to take the money while keeping me at arm's length. That's not good for any of us. So what happens now? Thomas asked, his voice suddenly small, reminding me of the little boy who used to ask me to check for monsters under his bed. We can't afford the mortgage payment on our own right now. Yes, you can, I said firmly. You and Sarah both have good jobs. You might need to adjust your spending habits, but you can absolutely afford your home. You're 42 years old, Thomas. It's time to stand on your own feet financially. And what if we lose the house? What if we have to sell and move because of this? Would you do that to your grandchildren? I closed my eyes, recognizing the manipulation tactic. No one is going to lose the house. One missed payment won't lead to foreclosure. But continuing this conversation via phone isn't productive. When I get back next week, I'd like you to come over to my place, alone. We need to have an honest conversation, face to face. And if I do that, you'll make the mortgage payment? There was a calculating tone in his voice that I had never heard before, or perhaps had never allowed myself to recognize. No, Thomas. The January payment remains canceled. I am using that money for my vacation, as I told you. But I will consider resuming payments in February, depending on our conversation and where we go from here. You're blackmailing me into visiting you? I'm establishing a boundary. I'm no longer willing to provide financial support without a respectful relationship. It's your choice whether that's something you want to work on. And what about the girls? Are you punishing them too? Lily was asking about you yesterday. The mention of my granddaughter sent a pang through my heart, but I held firm. I love Lily and Zoe more than I can express. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm trying to create a healthier relationship with all of you, one based on genuine connection rather than financial obligation. By running off to Florida without telling anyone and scaring us half to death? I told you exactly where I was going in my email. The fact that you didn't take it seriously, or perhaps didn't even read it carefully, isn't my responsibility. I paused, then added, I'll be home on the 30th. Come by on the 1st, 1 o'clock. We can talk then. And if I don't come, that's your choice, Thomas. But it will tell me everything I need to know about what our relationship really means to you. I took a deep breath. Think about what you want our family to be. Think about what you're teaching your daughters about the value of family connections. Is money really the only thing holding us together? Because if it is, that's not a family at all. I ended the call before he could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I set the phone down. The conversation had gone both better and worse than I had expected. Thomas hadn't hung up on me, but he had revealed a calculating side I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. The emotional manipulation, the immediate leap to how the mortgage payment would affect him rather than concern for why I had made such an uncharacteristic decision, spoke volumes. I looked out at the ocean, its vastness putting my problems into perspective. Whatever happened next would be a new chapter. Whether Thomas showed up on the 1st or not, I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my self-respect. The rest would unfold as it would. For now, I had dinner plans with my new friend Gordon, and the remainder of my vacation to enjoy. I returned home on the 30th as planned, feeling refreshed and somehow stronger. The week away had given me perspective, and my conversations with Gordon had helped me see that I wasn't alone in my struggles. Many parents of adult children faced similar challenges, negotiating new boundaries and relationships as everyone aged and circumstances changed. My house felt different when I walked in. Quieter, but not in a lonely way. I unpacked, did a load of laundry, and spent some time looking through old photo albums. Pictures of Thomas as a baby, as a gap-toothed first grader, as a gangly teenager. Martha and me on our wedding day, both looking impossibly young. Family vacations and holiday gatherings from happier times. I wasn't looking at these photos with nostalgia or regret. I was reminding myself of the full arc of our family story. Thomas and I had a history that couldn't be erased, regardless of what happened next. That gave me comfort as January first approached. I wasn't sure if Thomas would actually show up. Part of me expected a text message with an excuse, or perhaps no communication at all. But at 12:55, I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked out the window and saw Thomas sitting in his vehicle, seemingly gathering his courage. Finally, he got out and walked to my door. I opened it before he could knock. "Come in, son. Thank you for coming." He nodded stiffly and stepped inside, shrugging off his jacket. He looked around the living room as if seeing it for the first time, though he had grown up in this house. Perhaps he was seeing it through new eyes now that our relationship had shifted. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be good," he said, following me to the kitchen. I had prepared a simple lunch of sandwiches and soup. Nothing elaborate, but enough to show I had expected him to stay and talk. I set a mug of coffee in front of him, prepared the way he liked it with 2 sugars and a splash of cream, and sat across from him at the kitchen table. "How was your Christmas?" I asked, starting with a neutral question. He looked surprised at the question. "It was fine. The girls got too many presents, as usual. Sarah's parents stayed until yesterday." I nodded. "And how are Lily and Zoe? I missed seeing them over the holidays." Something in Thomas's expression shifted. "They asked about you." Lily wanted to know why Grandpa wasn't coming for Christmas like we said he would. That stung. "You told them I was coming?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "We had mentioned it as a possibility. When plans changed, we said you were traveling." "Well, at least that part was true," I said, trying to keep bitterness from my voice. "I did enjoy my trip. Made a new friend, actually. Another grandfather spending the holidays alone." Thomas fidgeted with his coffee mug. "Dad, about the mortgage payment." I held up a hand. "We'll get to that. But first, I want to talk about what's really going on between us. Why was it necessary to lie to me about your Christmas plans? Why not simply tell me the truth?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. It was exactly what he used to do as a teenager when caught in a difficult situation. "It was easier than dealing with the fallout," he admitted. "Sarah didn't want you there. She said she couldn't handle the criticism and comparison to Mom for another holiday. She wanted just her family this year. I didn't know how to tell you that without hurting you. So instead, you lied. You don't think finding out about the truth through Sarah's Facebook posts hurt worse?" He winced. "I didn't think you'd see those. Sarah usually keeps her posts private." "That's not the point, Thomas. The point is that you weren't honest with me. You've been excluding me from your family's life while continuing to accept significant financial support from me. Do you not see how hurtful that is?" Thomas stared into his coffee. "I never asked you to pay for our house." "No, you didn't. I offered because I love you and wanted to help. But love goes both ways, son. Respect goes both ways. And for years now, I've been giving both without receiving much in return." He looked up, a flash of defensiveness in his eyes. "That's not fair. We've been busy building our lives. Sarah's career is demanding. The girls have activities. We can't drop everything for regular visits. I never asked you to drop everything. I asked to be included in your lives in some meaningful way, to see my grandchildren more than twice a year, to be invited to holiday celebrations instead of being fed excuses and lies." I took a sip of my coffee, giving us both a moment. "Do you know what hurts the most? It's that you don't seem to value our relationship enough to be honest. If Sarah has issues with me, we should address them directly. If you need space from me, tell me that. But the avoidance and deception have to stop." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. I've been caught in the middle, he finally said, his voice lower. Sarah has strong opinions about family dynamics. Her parents are very involved in our lives. They live nearby, they help with the girls, they fit into the life Sarah wants. You, he hesitated. I don't fit. I finished for him. He nodded reluctantly. Sarah says you're stuck in the past, that you're always bringing up Mom and how she would have done things, that you look disappointed when you see our home, or how we're raising the girls. I took a deep breath. I didn't realize I was doing that. It was never my intention to compare or criticize. I miss your mother every day, but I've never expected Sarah to be her or to do things the way Martha did. It's not always what you say, Dad. Sometimes it's just the way you look around our house, or how you mention what Mom would have thought about something. I nodded slowly. I can see how that might feel judgmental, even if I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry for that. But Thomas, the solution to that problem is conversation, not exclusion. Not lies. We sat in silence for a moment. I got up and brought the sandwiches and soup to the table. We began eating, the familiar routine of sharing a meal helping to ease some of the tension. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship and what needs to change, I said after we'd eaten a bit. I've realized that I've been enabling an unhealthy dynamic by trying to buy my way into your life. That stops now. Thomas looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means I won't be resuming the mortgage payments. Not next month, not ever. That chapter is closed. He put down his spoon. Dad, we can't afford the full payment right now. Sarah just took a new position that will pay better eventually, but right now we're stretched thin. You can afford it, Thomas. You might need to make some adjustments to your spending, but you absolutely can afford your home. You and Sarah both have good jobs. It's time for you to take full financial responsibility for your choices. So that's it? You're just cutting us off because of one holiday? I shook my head. It's not about one holiday. It's about years of being kept at a distance while I continued to provide financial support. It's about recognizing that I've been enabling a situation that isn't healthy for any of us. You're my son, and I love you. But you're also a grown man with a family of your own. I need to respect you enough to let you stand on your own feet. Thomas looked down at the table. I don't know what to say. This feels like punishment. It's not punishment. It's a necessary change for all of us. I won't be used as a checkbook while being excluded from your lives. And you need to stop depending on me financially at 42. I got up and went to my office, returning with a small box. I placed it on the table between us. What's this? Thomas asked. Letters I've written to Lily and Zoe over the years. Letters I never sent because I wasn't sure if they'd be given to the girls. Birthday cards, Christmas notes, just thoughts I wanted to share with my grandchildren. There's one for every birthday and Christmas since they were born. Thomas opened the box and picked up a few of the envelopes. Each was carefully labeled with a name and date. I didn't know you were writing to them. There's a lot you don't know about me anymore, Thomas. We've grown too far apart. I took a deep breath. But I want that to change, if you do too. I want a real relationship with you and with my granddaughters, not one based on financial support or obligation, but on genuine connection. Thomas was quiet, looking at the pile of unsent letters. I could see emotion working in his face. The girls would love these, he finally said. They ask about you, you know, more than I've let on. They wonder why they don't see you more often. I would like to change that, I said gently, but it has to be a mutual decision. I won't force my way into your lives, and I won't try to buy my way in either. The question is, do you want me in your lives? In a real way, not just as the grandfather who shows up occasionally with presents and checks. Thomas looked up at me, and for a moment, I could see the little boy he had once been, the one who had run to me with skinned knees and bad dreams, looking for comfort. I do, he said quietly. I miss you, Dad. I miss how things used to be. Things can't be exactly as they were, I said. Too much has changed. But we can build something new, something based on honesty and mutual respect. We talked for another 3 hours. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. Thomas shared his fears about fatherhood, his concerns about his marriage, his frustrations at work. I listened, offering advice, only when asked, mostly just being present and attentive. I told him about my trip to Florida, about Gordon and our conversations, about my realization that I needed to reclaim my own life rather than living through Thomas and his family. By the time he got ready to leave, we had reached several important understandings. The mortgage would now be entirely his responsibility. We would schedule regular visits, with or without Sarah, depending on what felt comfortable. Thomas promised to speak with Sarah about her feelings toward me, to encourage more direct communication rather than avoidance. And I promised to be mindful of any comments or behaviors that might come across as judgmental or comparing their family to how things were when Martha was alive. As I walked him to the door, Thomas turned and did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me, a real embrace rather than the perfunctory pat on the back that had become our standard greeting. "Thank you for being honest with me, Dad," he said, even when it was hard to hear. "That's what real love is," I replied. "Being truthful, even when it's difficult." He nodded. "Sarah's family is having a New Year's Day dinner tonight. Would you like to come? I know it's last minute, but the girls would love to see you." I smiled. "I'd like that very much." As I watched him drive away, I felt a mixture of hope and caution. One conversation wouldn't solve all our problems. Sarah might still be resistant to my presence in their lives. Old patterns might reassert themselves. But we had made a start, an honest one, and that was worth more than any check I could have written. The New Year's dinner at Thomas and Sarah's house was understandably awkward at first. Sarah was polite but reserved, clearly surprised by my presence. Her parents, whom I had met only a handful of times over the years, seemed similarly taken aback. But the genuine joy on my granddaughters' faces when they saw me walk through the door made any discomfort worthwhile. "Grandpa," Lily shouted, running toward me with arms outstretched. I caught her in a hug, marveling at how much she had grown since I had last seen her at Easter. Zoe approached more cautiously, but her smile was no less warm. "Did you bring presents?" she asked, with a child's directness that made the adults laugh nervously. "Not today," I said, kneeling to her level. "But I brought something even better. Stories. Lots and lots of stories about your daddy when he was your age." That broke the ice considerably. During dinner, at the girls' insistence, I shared tales of Thomas's childhood misadventures, much to his mock chagrin and everyone's entertainment. Sarah's parents joined in, sharing stories of Sarah's youth. For the first time, I felt like we were having a genuine family gathering rather than a performance where everyone played assigned roles. After dinner, while the others were having coffee in the living room, Sarah approached me in the kitchen where I was helping with dishes. "Thomas told me about your conversation," she said, carefully placing wine glasses in the cabinet, about the mortgage and other things. I nodded, keeping my tone neutral. "I hope you understand it wasn't meant as a punishment, just a necessary change." She was quiet for a moment, arranging the glasses with precise movements. "He also said, 'You feel I've been keeping you at a distance.' That's been my experience," I acknowledged. "But I understand there are two sides to every story. I'd like to hear yours, if you're willing to share it." Sarah turned to face me, her expression guarded, but not hostile. "You intimidate me," she admitted. "Martha sounds like she was this perfect wife and mother. Everyone talks about her with such reverence. How am I supposed to measure up to that?" I leaned against the counter, considering her words. "No one is asking you to measure up to Martha. She wasn't perfect, though grief sometimes makes us remember people that way. She was just herself, as you are yourself, but you compare us. Maybe not out loud, but I can see it in your eyes when you look around our home or watch how I interact with the girls." I took a deep breath. "If I've done that, I'm truly sorry. It was never my intention. Martha and I had our way of doing things, but that doesn't mean it was the only right way. You and Thomas have created your own family, with your own traditions and approaches. That's exactly as it should be." She studied me for a long moment. "I'm not promising anything will change overnight," she finally said. "But I'm willing to try for more open communication, for the girl's sake, and for Thomas. He misses you more than he lets on." It wasn't a warm embrace or a declaration of affection, but it was a start, a crack in the wall that had been built between us over the years. I would take it. The months that followed brought gradual but significant changes to our family dynamic. True to his word, Thomas began visiting me regularly, sometimes alone for our deep conversations, sometimes bringing the girls for weekend afternoons. Sarah rarely came along, but she no longer actively discouraged these visits, which was progress in itself. I focused on rebuilding my own life outside of my relationship with Thomas and his family. I joined a local book club, meeting twice a month with a diverse group of retirees who shared my love of reading. I stayed in touch with Gordon, my Christmas vacation friend, speaking by phone every couple of weeks and planning to meet up again in the summer. I even started researching a trip to Europe, specifically to the Italian countryside that Martha and I had always dreamed of visiting together. Planning this journey felt like both an honoring of our shared dream and a declaration of my independence. I didn't need to wait for anyone else's permission or company to fulfill this long-held wish. The financial dynamic between Thomas and me shifted dramatically. After the initial adjustment period, during which I heard occasional comments about budget constraints, Thomas and Sarah adapted to handling the full mortgage payment. Thomas later confided that it had been a wake-up call for both of them, forcing them to review their spending habits and make more thoughtful choices about their finances. "It was hard at first," he admitted during one of our father-son lunches. "But honestly, Dad, it's been good for us. We're more careful about our money now, and it feels good knowing we're standing on our own feet completely." I nodded, feeling proud of him. "That's all I ever wanted for you, son. To know you can handle whatever life throws at you, with or without my help." As spring turned to summer, I received an unexpected phone call from Sarah one evening. "Abram," she said, her use of my first name still new and slightly awkward between us. "The girls have a dance recital next weekend. They've been practicing for months. They would really love it if you could come." The invitation was delivered with a warmth I hadn't heard from her before. "I would be honored," I replied, careful not to make too much of this olive branch, but appreciating it nonetheless. "And afterward," she continued, "we thought you might join us for dinner at the house. Nothing fancy, just family." Family. The word hung in the air between us, full of meaning. "Thank you, Sarah. I'll be there." When Christmas approached again, I braced myself for old patterns to reassert themselves. Instead, I received a call from Sarah herself in early December. "We're planning our Christmas celebration," she said without preamble. "The girls are insisting that you need to be here to help decorate the tree. Apparently, no one else knows how to hang the lights properly." I chuckled. "I'd be happy to help with the lights." "Good." She paused, then added, "We'd like you to spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with us. If you want to, that island. The guest room is yours." I had to take a moment to compose myself before responding. "I would love that. Thank you, Sarah." "Don't thank me yet," she said, but I could hear the smile in her voice. "You'll be put to work. Turkey carving, present wrapping, the works." "I can't think of anything I'd rather do," I said honestly. As I hung up the phone, I walked to the window and looked out at my garden, dormant now in winter but ready to bloom again when the season changed. Life was like that too, I reflected. There were seasons of dormancy, of distance, of apparent death. But with patience, courage, and the right conditions, new growth was always possible. The journey with Thomas and his family was far from complete. We were still finding our way toward a healthier relationship, still navigating boundaries and expectations. Sarah and I were building a tentative friendship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. My relationship with my granddaughters was flourishing as they got to know me as a person, not just a distant figure who appeared occasionally with presents. But the most profound change had been within me. I had learned that true love doesn't cling or try to purchase affection. It doesn't sacrifice self-respect in hopes of acceptance. True love stands firm in its own worthwhile. remaining open to connection. It offers support without enabling dependence. It speaks truth, even difficult truth, because genuine relationships can only thrive in honesty. I had stopped paying for Thomas's mortgage, but in doing so, I had invested in something far more valuable, a relationship built on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. I had reclaimed my sense of self-worth, refusing to be sidelined in my own family story. And in standing up for myself, I had ultimately given my son the opportunity to stand on his own feet, both financially and emotionally. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop trying so hard to be what we think they want. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the freedom to find their own way, even if that path looks different than we had imagined. And sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we matter too, that our needs and feelings deserve respect, especially from those who claim to love us. That Christmas, as I helped Thomas string lights on their tree while Sarah and the girls unpacked ornaments, I felt Martha's presence in a new way. Not as a ghost of Christmas past that haunted our present, but as the foundation of love upon which we were building something new, something authentic, something that honored her memory without being trapped by it. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? Did it ultimately strengthen your relationship, or reveal that there wasn't much there to begin with? Share your experience in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself can sometimes be the most loving thing you can do. Thank you for listening. And remember, true love doesn't diminish your worth, it celebrates it.